You guys, I don't think you're going to be ready for the dark, twisted series that I'm about to be talking about, so buckle up. This is one that's going to be a wild ride. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Charles from the channel Books on Stereo. I'm here to talk about the Web of Sin saga by Aleatha Romig. Now, this is not going to be a full-on like author binge / marathon because I haven't read everything by this author, but I have read her entire Web of Sin saga, which includes about 12 books. Now, you do not have to worry. This will be non-spoilery, so you do not have to worry about encountering any spoilers. So instead of going through each of the books in the trilogy, so let me back up a little bit. So a little bit of information about the series is it takes place in Chicago, and it follows the criminal underworld scene in Chicago. And that's the most I can tell you without spoiling any details. And so overall, the series is comprised of 4 different trilogies. So that's why it's 12 books in total. I do believe you have to read all the books in order that they were published so you get the full entire story. So instead of going through each of the books in each of the trilogies, I'm only going to be talking about the trilogies as a whole just to avoid spoilers and give you my overall star rating on each of the trilogies. And of course, as we get further along in the books, the details, especially once we get to the 4th and final trilogy in this saga, details will be a little bit scarce, so I'm just preparing you for that. And without further ado, let's get into the books. So the first trilogy that we have is the Web of Sin Trilogy, and this trilogy comprises of Secret, Lies, and Promises. Now, in this trilogy, we follow Irene and Sparrow, and it's their romance. I can't go into too much detail who Sparrow is, but this is kind of like an arranged marriage type of story. And so yeah, let's talk about my overall thoughts about this trilogy. So overall, I really did enjoy it. I did feel that there was quite a few missteps in the beginning that weren't fully resolved for me by the end of this trilogy, but overall, there was so many plot twists in this trilogy, it kept me on my feet, and wow, oh my goodness, this book was just absolute craziness. And I do recommend that you start with this trilogy because it does set up the world, it sets up our characters, and when you read this trilogy, you understand who the next trilogies are going to be about. I'm not going to say that because it's a spoiler, but overall I gave this trilogy a 4 out of 5 stars. Then up next we have the Tango Web Trilogy, and this one includes Twisted, Obsessed, and Bound. And essentially in this story, our main character, our heroine I should say, she's basically working on this powerful drug that helps mitigate a lot of the symptoms of PTSD. Our hero is basically someone that kind of gets introduced and basically kind of like asks her how much is she willing to pay in order to sell what she knows about this drug, because she's one of the chief people behind this medication. And it's their romance. So we got a little bit more of like a romantic suspense plot going in this one. Absolutely love this one. The steam level on this one was through the roof. I gave this one another 4 out of 5 stars. I would have to say, like, you do not know the full scope of the story until you start getting into like books 2 and 3, because oh my goodness, the amount of plotting and detail that goes into this trilogy was just absolutely mind-blowing. And then I just had to pick up the 3rd trilogy in this series. And the 3rd series is entitled Web of Desire. And this one includes Spark, Flame, and Ashes. This one's gonna be a little bit hard to describe. So essentially we follow our heroine. She runs into the hero at this very high stakes poker game, and you find out that these two were actually married before, and the heroine actually left the hero high and dry. And so it's kind of like a second chance romance in that aspect, but oh my goodness, you guys. So this one was probably my favorite of the series. And interestingly enough, like when I first read these books, I started out with the first book in this trilogy, not having read any of the other books that came before it. And one of my major critiques was that you don't really understand the world that this story takes place in. But if you read the first books that come before this, especially if you start with that first trilogy that I mentioned, it really makes sense and it kind of sets up all the other subsequent trilogies. So this is like another PSA, read the series in order if you are interested in reading it. Or if you just don't care about the world as a whole, then just know that going into the other trilogies, you're going to be missing a lot of that world building that you do get in other books. And so overall, I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I love the chemistry between our 2 main characters, and this was such a good plot twisty, kind of mind-blowing trilogy, and like oh my goodness, and I really don't have anything negative to say about this trilogy. This is where things start to take a nosedive for me with this series. And now we're going to be talking about the 4th and final trilogy in the Sparrow saga, or Web of Sin saga I should say. And the final trilogy is entitled Dangerous Webs, and this one includes Dusk, Dark, and Dawn. Now in this one, I really can't tell you anything about the plot. It's so interwoven with all the other trilogies that came before it that I really can't explain to you what is going on in this book without spoiling and giving away too many details. But if you want like a trope type idea, it's a little bit of like dating your best friend's brother situation, if that makes any sense. Now overall, I gave this trilogy probably like a 2.5 out of 5 stars. It really is because this whole entire trilogy just felt extremely rushed, and we're kind of just moving from A to Z to B to C to like D to Z all over the place. So for me, it was very hard to follow at times, and I really couldn't kind of get into our characters' romance because it seems like a lot of their romance happened off the page, which I wasn't a particular fan of. I did like some of the topics that this book dealt with and some of the resurgence of issues that were prevalent in other books and how those are kind of resolved in this trilogy. I think overall this trilogy was trying to just do way too much for the amount of space that it was kind of given itself to tell this couple's story. Now let's talk about my overall thoughts about all these books. I would have to say this: if you want fast page turning kind of thrillery type romantic suspense books, Aleatha Romig is your gal. One thing I do have to say after reading all these books, there is a pattern to how she builds her trilogies. So the first book tends to be a little bit kind of narrower and focused, tends to be a little bit more on the micro level scale, if that makes any sense. And then with each book, you kind of widen the scope of the story until you get like the final scope of the story in the third book. So it's really not like you can read just one book and feel satisfied. You really need to read all 3 books within the trilogy all at once, because it really is a story divided in 3 parts rather than a story told in 3 parts, if that makes any sense. So I don't want you to read the first book and like go, okay, I feel like I didn't get enough from that first book, because that's the point. It's really just part 1 in a 3-part story. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense. Let me know if that doesn't make sense down in the comment section down below. Yes, I would highly recommend this author's work to you guys. I think if you really like romantic suspense, if you like a little bit of kind of like your darker romance but not too dark, you would definitely like these books. And if you're looking for great audiobooks, this is definitely a series that you want to check out on audio. I listen to all the books on audio and I absolutely love the experience. And so yeah, that is all I have for you guys today. Let me know down in the comment section down below if you have read these books, and if you have, let me know which one is your favorite, which one of the trilogies is your favorite in this overall saga, and are you sad to see this world come to a close? And if you haven't read this series, hopefully let me know in the comment section down below if this review convinced you to go out and pick up this series. And I have to say a huge thank you to Steph's from Steph's Romance Book Talk. I'll link her channel down below because she's the one who kind of turned me on to this series. And I'll catch you guys with a brand new video. Peace.